one. All right. You know what it is? You know who it is. We are back with another episode of the BG Perform podcast. Today, I got the new setup. I got the desk. I got the light. I got the camera. I'm coming
We
back.
got the action. Let's go.
Got the action. I got I've obviously I've been home in New York, so it's I've taken the last week to really just kind of like, well, last 2 weeks I think it's been home to just like get into a groove here. I got a nice desk. I got a new setup. I hung up some pictures, as you can see. I hung up a couple things in my room, so things are starting to come together, and it's exciting. And we got a cool episode to talk to you about today. We're going to be talking about professional coaching. How do you become a professional coach? This is something that I have, I don't want to say yet dedicated my life to, but this is something that, like, personally, I have in practice. But I think one of the things that Jerry and I both want to do, and with kind of having this episode, is starting to get this out there because I think this is such an important topic to talk about inside of coaching. And I think that for me, I want coaching to be looked at as what I look at it as, right? Like I look at, and Jerry, I'm sure you believe the same thing, but you can tell me, your view on this. But like I look at coaching as one of the most important things, especially fitness coaching, right? And I think that fitness coaching, while many people kind of talk about it as like a thing that you just do, I think that fitness coaching is the front lines of health, right? And I think that us as trainers, coaches, whatever you do want to call yourself, we are the front line of making people more healthy, introducing fitness into people's lives, and really changing the way that they view themselves and view working out, right? And there's a epidemic right now, really, of just poor health, poor decisions, poor information, all of that. And I think a lot of it is because fitness is so confusing of a field, and because coaches aren't professionals, right? Like I think that like when we really come down when it comes down to it, the fitness industry is one of these industries that the standard is very low in starting, right? And it's very much like you can be a salesman instead of an actually great coach. And oftentimes the people who are great coaches struggle. Like they really truly struggle because they don't have some of these like marketing, and sales tactics that they need to use to do that. And I think that it's really important that we as coaches, and I want to pioneer this, and I want this to be what BG Perform is known for, is that like when you step into the realm of BG Perform, it's professionalism, right? And this word comes up in my head a lot, and this is something that me and Jerry like kind of prepping for this podcast is the word that kept popping up in our vocabulary and in our talk is professionalism, right? And I think when we talk about professionalism, it's just like it's such an important word. Like that's it. It's just such an important word, and it has so much to do with success in the coaching field. I just realized we didn't start a timer, but
It's all right. We
I
usually
kind
go
of
over it anyway.
I just went into it. But anyways, what I'll do is I'll set it on my phone just
Cool.
so I have. Um, yeah. So I think like I'm gonna go with a 29-minute timer. Um, I think professionalism, it needs to be had in our industry, right? And I think without it, it's just going to continue to be this thing that's kind of viewed the way it is, which is like, oh, yeah, it's a trainer, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've like told people what I do before I tell them what I actually do. Because a lot of times when people ask me, I'm usually like, oh, I'm a personal trainer or I train, not telling them about like kind of the depths at which, I do the things that I do inside of training. And it's often just like, oh, cool type thing, right? And it's like, oh, like a trainer. And like that type of, because even I, as a trainer, when I hear it, I'm like, oh, like, I don't know, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Because like when you hear a personal trainer, you hear like, Planet Fitness personal trainer or Crunch personal trainer or something like that, where it's like, and Jerry has like specific, uh, what do you call it, experience with this, where it's like you're in these settings and some of these people are just like, I can't believe they're allowed to like train people, right? And it's something, yeah, and it's something that when we really dive into, like, professionalism has to be at the forefront of everything we do in general, right? But as coaches, because we're going to be the reason that we change the way coaching is and create a new standard, right? And that's why BG Performs, motto or mission statement, whatever you want to call it, is to influence the highest standard of coaching, because I want there to be a standard, right? I want people to look at a coach and be like, understand what he has, right? Because there's so many certifications in the coaching world that it's just like you don't know what is what, and there is no real standard except for like, NSCA and NASM. And there's a couple other ones, but like realistically, like those are probably the top two. And then on top of that, just like have an understanding of like what not to do, right? Or what not to go for inside of training. So, again, today the conversation is going to be becoming a professional coach and diving into that. Jerry, anything you want to add to that before we start?
I think professionalism can be a lot of things can come to your mind when you think of professionalism, but like the biggest thing is like being top in the field, like making sure that you're continuing to better yourself to be at the top. And I think that we'll give some examples later of people that we see as professionals, but they're not the people to just be like, well, I do this. They're
Yeah.
continuing to try and become better. So
Yeah. And I think like it starts with, especially in personal training, because I've seen this conversation a couple times. It's like, there's a lot of different things that go into becoming a trainer, right? And obviously, there is a certification process if you want to work at like a certain type of establishment. But for the most part, people don't want to work at those establishments, right? Whether it be like local to us, like Vents or Best Fitness, or even like more, national, like Lifetime, LA Fitness, those types of things. Like they look for certain certifications. But if you're working on your own or you're working at like a local gym, a lot of times they're not looking for those types of certifications. They're just looking for people who want to train. And this is where things can get kind of sketchy because, like I said, you end up kind of buying into a sales tactic rather than an actual trainer, right? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fucking good trainers out there. And I'm not here to say like, I'm not really here to say right now who's a good and who's a bad trainer. What I'm here to say is that like, for me, when I look at other industries in the world, there's a clear line for professionalism, right? Like no one can just fake being a lawyer, right? If you've watched Suits, it's a great
yeah,
show. But
that
like
doesn't count.
you get in trouble. You get in trouble, right? Like it's not legal. You can't fake being a doctor, Although I've heard terrible stories of people faking being doctors. You can't fake being, to a certain extent, a plumber or an electrician because it's like you can't do the job. You can't fucking do the job. You know what I mean? But like for some reason you can fake being a trainer for a very long time, right? You don't actually have to know what you're doing. You can look a certain way, you can have a bunch of letters behind your name, and there's still no real standard of like what should coaching truly look like, right? And I think in coaching, it's like it's such a unique perspective because it's not just about how you look, right? And it's not just about the education you have. Whereas like being a lawyer, being a doctor, there's kind of like the lawyer's job is to understand law, right? And the doctor's job is to understand, medical practices and for the most part, like the body, right? Even though they don't do a great job of it. But, a trainer's job is to train and understand people and understand sales and understand money and understand, like it's like this mixed hat a job where you have to have four or five different skills to be good at the job. And it's why there's such high turnover rate inside of personal training. How many people do you know that used to be a personal trainer or they were a personal trainer and then they got a quote unquote real job, right? Like this is the type of thing where it's like the industry sets us up to fail inside of personal training because the standards are so low, because you can go get a weekend course because you can pay $300 and take a test and then randomly you're a trainer now, right? And again, it needs to start somewhere, obviously, because like, when we talk about this stuff, like to me, it's a mindset, right? If you're going to be a professional coach, it's a mindset. It's dedicating yourself to a craft. Again, this doesn't like, and the cool thing about this, like this podcast, obviously we're coaches, we're strength conditioning coaches. We train athletes, we train regular people. This really goes in anything. If you're again a plumber, an electrician, a lawyer, a doctor, an artist, a musician, whatever it might be, like if you have the mindset of like I want to be the best at what I'm doing and dedicating myself to my craft, then you're going to be a professional, right? And I think that when we talk about this stuff, being a professional, like it starts there. It starts with the idea that like I want to be a professional, not I just want to make a couple dollars or I want to make a quick buck or I want to do this until the next thing, right? If you're just doing that because it's an easy stepping stone, you're not going to be like, one, you're not going to be good at it, and two, everybody who is believing in you is it's you're doing a disservice to them, right? Because even in what we do, like this is one of my most frustrating things, right? It's like people don't go to a lawyer and say, oh well, how about the first session free? Or they don't go to a doctor and be like, well, what do can you help me? And like, I can't afford this, but like, maybe you can help me a little bit, right? It doesn't happen. Like, you go to these people, if you said that to them, they're gonna be like, cool, get out, like, go,
Yeah.
right? But somehow in personal training, it's okay for us to go into gyms and coaches and be like, oh, well, that's too expensive, or, oh, um, ask for discounts or ask for free sessions or this and whatever it might be. And that's where I want to come in and make a change, right? I want personal training to be looked the same as, because it should be. It should be looked at the same as being a lawyer and being a doctor and being a professional in any other field, but we do it to ourselves, right? We do it to ourselves with not valuing ourselves. We do it to ourselves not believing in ourselves. We do it to ourselves by not trusting in our value and trusting in the fact that we have to go in the same direction. We have to treat ourselves as if we're lawyers. We have to dedicate ourselves to crafts as if we're a lawyer and as if we're a doctor, right? The biggest difference for me and what being a professional is from like a lawyer and a doctor into personal training is that you can't just become a lawyer, right? Like, you need 8 years of school to become a lawyer. You need 8 years to 12 years of school to be a doctor, right? And it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. It's not a weekend certification, right? And I think that those are the things that make people go, oh, they must know what they're talking about. Like, there's value. It's a lot of money. It's not easy. And then inherently with personal training, you can buy a weekend certification like I did with my CrossFit certification, and you can open a gym the next weekend. And it's like, this is why we're not viewed as professional. This is why the industry struggles. This is why the health industry is more of a scam than it is anything else, right? So we need to we need to understand this stuff. We need to know this. Jerry, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the you were talking about the biggest point of frustration for you. For me, it has to be that because it's so saturated in the industry and the bar is so low, like ever since Instagram and TikTok really took off, because they could do these weekend courses, these influencers just say whatever. And of course, they're like in their 20s. Of course, they're fit because they're either a college athlete, have been an athlete their whole life, and they're still in that mode. So they can just say literally anything, and people will believe them if they say it with confidence and conviction.
Yep.
And because of that, like it makes it, like you said, people don't respect the role as much because it's like, well, everybody can do this. It's like, no, everybody cannot do this. Everybody thinks they can do it. And like you said, like I've met countless number of people, even some close friends that have started as trainers and then they're like, yeah, this is not for me. Because it does take a lot of effort if you truly want to do it the right way.
Yeah. Something else popped in my head. I was at the gym the other day and I was with Nick, and I was like, it just pissed me off. It's like, working out training is like the only thing. I saw this dude, he looked like someone's dad with his son. Teach him how to fucking deadlift.
Oh
Looking like
God.
absolute garbage. I was like, this is the only place that you can go in and just, oh, I'll teach you how to do it. Like, I'll show
Yeah,
you how to
imagine
do
go to the dentist office, be like, I'll show you how
it.
to do a root canal.
I'll do the root canal. It's
Give
like,
me that
it
gas.
just
All right, now you have some. Like
like,
what?
seriously, like, imagine, like, can you imagine in any other setting the dad going in and be like, I'll show you how to do it. Like, the gym is, and it's notorious, right? It's notorious that you go in with your dad, he shows you how to work out, you do it for a couple months, you hurt yourself, and you fall into the cycle that he was. I used to deadlift 415 for 10 reps, and he's going through the whole, shebang of how he used to do this and lift that, and it's just
Every
the only
football
thing.
coach ever.
Yeah, like, it's the only industry place, whatever you want to call it, that I see this happen regularly with like, just it's so common. It's almost like laughable at how common it is to see that.
Dude, to add to that though, like that football thing that I just said is so true. Sport coaches are sport coaches. They are not strength conditioning coaches unless they actually have practiced it and like do what personal trainers do. The amount of sport coaches I've dealt with in the past who are just like, nah, we're not doing that. We used to do it this way. And then they show their deadlift and they pick it up, their knees are shaking like a dog taking a shit. They're super like it's like, why are you having a fucking 14-year-old kid load the bar with three plates and you're going, get it up, you better get it up. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the like, oh my, that's so I can go on forever. That
Oh, it's
bothers
hard.
me.
It's hard. And like and one of the things that like it makes me think of is obviously like when I think of professionals, right? When I think of professionals in the field of whatever it might be, right? Like this is a question that I sat down a long time ago and asked myself is like, all right, if I want to be the best, and then again, I a long time ago I sat down and I was like, I want to be the best coach that I can be. Like I dedicated myself. I did not give myself another option. I did not give myself a plan B, really. I have other skills. I have things that I was always like, yeah, if I needed to, whatever. But like I never sat down and was like, I'm not going to be a coach, right? I literally couldn't imagine myself doing anything else besides coaching, at least at this point in my life. It might change. Maybe I'll have like some revelation and I'll change, but like for right now, I don't. And when I sat down and I was like, all right, what is a professional to me? What does it look like? Like my mind automatically went to like two things, right? It went to my goat, Eli, and my other goat, Derek Jeter, right? Eli Manning for the most part. But when I think about these guys, like just in general, like they were the best at what they did at one point in their life, right? Maybe they weren't the best of all time, but on their team, they were captains. They won multiple championships, which means they were the best in the world at multiple times in their life. It wasn't just a fluke. It was two times for Eli, who beat the best quarterback of all time, right? Quote unquote. And Derek Jeter, who won five titles with the Yankees, right? And maybe it's just because I'm a New York guy, but like they were the best to me. Like they were professionals. There wasn't any scandals. There wasn't any, things that happened. Maybe Eli signed some extra helmets or whatever it was. Yeah, I don't really know what happened there, but like it was never it was professionals, true professionals. They went in, they did the work, they did what they had to do. They were always there. They never missed games, right? Like I think Derek Jeter only missed games because of his shoulder when he hurt it. I think it was like 2006 or 2007. Eli only missed. He had the longest streak ever of or was coming close to it before stupid ass Bob McAdoo sat him. But he had the Iron Man streak, which was basically the most games started in a row for a quarterback, and he was at like 15 seasons in a row of starting every single game, which is nuts, right? Like, and if you know football as a sport, you know how demanding it is, you know how challenging it is. But it's like these are the types of things that you need to be professional to be this good at it, right? And you need to be coming into to work understanding emotion, like put your emotions into it, dedicating yourself to whatever it is that you're trying to do. And when I see these guys, like I just think of like that's what I think of as professional. That's what I see as like I want to be that, right? How do I take that and how do I bring that into what I do as a coach, right? Another person is John Bellion, like one of my favorite artists, like just a professional, someone who's just does the thing that's supposed to be done and doesn't try to take shortcuts, doesn't try to scam anybody, doesn't try to, lead people down the wrong path for their own thing. In the world of sports, you see so much where it's like these guys are, it's one of the things that I think is so amazing about LeBron, to a certain extent. Like, hopefully nothing comes out about LeBron in the future and makes me like, regret this. But like, LeBron has been one of the most scrutinized athletes ever from the point he was 15 till now he's 40 and he's still like the best player in the league right now and he's 40 and there hasn't been a single hiccup in his career, right? Might 5 years down the line might find something because everybody's got dirt nowadays, but for right now, like there hasn't been a single hiccup, right? And that's professional, like that's being a professional. And I look at him like, how do I take that, how do I implement it? It's none of those guys except for maybe LeBron were the best athletes, right? Eli, if I saw him walking down the street, I would think he was my like accountant, right? Jeter to a certain extent was never the best athlete. Like he never was. And even Tom Brady, like Tom Brady was not he was a seventh round pick. He was not a great athlete. Like these guys were just hard workers. They studied, they dedicated themselves, they showed up every single day. They were the best players. They were captains on their team. Like those are professionals, right? And that's where like when I see that, I'm like, that's what needs to be placed into strength conditioning or personal training. Like it needs to be at this level where there's a captain. Like you're that's where we need to be. And we need people who want to step up and be that to get us to the point where we can go from that like, oh, you're a trainer to, oh wow, you're a personal trainer. Right. And that's where kind of all of this leads for me. Anything you want to add?
Dude, just to add to Tom Brady and then to give one more example after that, but Tom Brady, did you see the clip of him running the 40
Hmm.
from like his first year?
Yep.
And then they like overlaid it with his like most recent one,
Yep.
and he
Yep.
just smoked like his younger self. Like that's
Yeah.
dedication. To be, especially for how long he was in the league, that's insane. And then
Yeah.
obviously I think of it's hard not to think of Kobe Bryant when you think of like
Yeah.
top of his game. And I remember listening to a podcast where I think it was a podcast or maybe it was a YouTube clip. I can't even remember where I heard it, but it was back in like 2018. I was meal prepping and I was just listening, and he was talking about how uh, he went to this like summer camp for basketball, and he was like the worst one there. He was like, I didn't even make a basket. Like I was fucking terrible. And he was saying like he was so embarrassed, but then he went home and he didn't give up. He just kept, because it was his dream. He wanted to play basketball. So he put everything he had into it. The next year when he returned, he ended up being like the best there. And in that like initial moment, people remembered him were like, oh, here's that kid again. But then he just
Yeah.
came out on top. And it's the
Yeah.
the fact that like he's that dedicated to his craft and he wants to be that much better. And it's the work that you put into it, you're gonna get
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think even to a certain extent, like Conor McGregor before the last like 5 years, I
Yeah.
think before that, right? Like, before his fight with really Khabib, like he was a professional. Like just all the clips you could watch from like pre 2016 of Conor were just like dedicated professional, right? Obviously things happen, they change, but it's like those are the types of things that like are professional in their sport, right? But again, I want to say this too, like you don't have to be an athlete to be a professional. Like there's plenty of people that I look up to like Gary Vee. There's people like business people that I look up to. Like I said, John Bellion, who's an artist. Like those types of people I look up to are professionals, and they're not athletes, right? It's not physical components, not just physical components. It's a mental capacity. It's the ability to understand something and just express yourself at being the best at it possible, right? Like if you never listen to John Bellion, one of my favorite things about John Bellion is just he is music, right? It's not just like he writes music. It's like that dude literally is fucking music. Like when he steps into the room, it's like you hear the songs. Like he has these videos where he breaks down, like just shows you the process of like step one to like the thought of the song into like everything that goes into like him producing the song, and it's like you see him going do 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 do, and then you start to hear it, and then you start to see him press the buttons, and you're like, holy shit, like you can see the song coming together. But it's just that freedom he allows himself to be the best, and like that mental just freedom to be like, I want to be the best at what I do. So I need to understand these little details and understand the little nuances. And just like we would write a workout, he makes a song. Right. And
Mhm.
that's where again, you don't have to be an athlete. It's just being dedicated to like the craft and pursuing it at the highest level.
Can't forget about the GOAT, Christian Bale.
Christian Bale.
Dude, he got
Yeah.
so skinny for The Machinist, and then he
Yeah.
became Batman like a year after. That's insane.
Or
Insane.
like, even Heath Ledger, like to a certain extent, like Heath Ledger was the Joker to the point that he fucking killed himself because of it, right? Like it's just like these people were so like there's a word I've seen on social media from a couple guys that I follow. I forgot the one guy's name, Zach, and he's like a huge advocate of it. But like being obsessed, right? Like there was for a very long time being obsessed was like viewed as like a negative. Then I think that like being obsessed with something or wanting to be the best was like a negative, and it's like all about this balance and all about, this, that. And like for me, like I've always found myself being on the unbalanced side of wanting to do the things that I love, but that's like balance for me, right? And I think that sometimes it was pushed for a long time, like you had to have this kind of like broader balance of your life, which I think is important. But I think that like being obsessed is like such a tool and such a cheat code for everything. Like when you find something you're obsessed about, like it's not hard to wake up. It's not hard to stay up till 12. It's not hard to do the extra work. It's not hard to do all the studying that you need to do. And I think a lot of people don't love training. You know what I mean? Coaching is hard. I don't think a lot of people love it. I think it's easy for a lot of people to get into. And I think if we were to do as much as we want to do in the industry and raise that standard, you're going to see a lot of those people drop off because they don't want it that bad, right? And that's why we're kind of in the spot we are in the world. But I think that training is one of those things that it's super easy. It's super, you know, it can be lucrative if you know how to sell, and it can be lucrative for a very, long or short time, depending on, how long you can hold it for. And there is professionalism in it, whether it be on the coaching end or the team sport end or like college pro team, that type of thing. But in the setting of like becoming your own coach and working for yourself, there's not a lot of it. And it's very hard. And yeah, I think like so today what I want to leave you guys with is I have like 5 tools. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jerry?
No, that was perfect.
All right. I have five things that I want to leave you with today that I believe help you become a professional coach, right? And I believe put you in a position in the driver's seat to become a professional coach. These things alone aren't just going to make you a professional coach, right? But if you can get these five things in order and have these be the focus for you early in your career, or even now in your career, if you're experienced and really just want to take your coaching to the next level, these five tools I think are the most important, right? And number one is time under tension. Like you need time. And I used to do this. I used to just kind of want to get to the front of the line. I used to just want to get with some of the people that I was training with and are training with now and just get there and just not be patient and not just wait my turn, right? And it's sometimes you just need time. You just need more mistakes to be made. You need more clients. You need more opportunities to fail, right? Because one of the best things that I saw when, for example, I had the opportunity to train Amanda. Because when I had the opportunity to train Amanda, she was coming in and she was kind of like, listen, I need someone like I have a title fight. Like I need someone I can trust. And I knew right from that moment, I was like, this was the fucking moment I've been waiting. Like, this is it. Like, I'm no one else is training her. I'm training her. Like, this is my client. And the first day I was like nervous. I walked in and I was like, oh my God, like, I don't want to fuck up, but like this and that. Everything was running through my head. And I just took a second. I was like, all right, like I've been working my ass off for 10 years or 8 years at that point to like be in this position. I know I have all the skills necessary, right? And it went how it went, right? 2 wins, won the belt back and then defended the belt, right? One of my biggest like accomplishments as a coach so far until Ian wins the belt. And yeah, it's just like it takes time. Like you need to give yourself time. You cannot be rushing this process. You can't be trying to jump the line. There's going to be opportunities if you do things right. Like if you do these five things on a weekly, monthly, daily basis, right? There's going to be that opportunity that comes up and you're going to be ready. And I promise you when that opportunity comes, if you do these things, that opportunity is going to come because you're ready, right? And I'm a big believer like you miss opportunities if you're not ready and you have to be ready because how many times does an Amanda Nunez come into your life? Right? Or like how many times do some of these clients or some of these people come into my life? They don't. And I knew I had to be ready when these moments came and I went to the places I needed to go and I was ready. And it was because of these things. I had a lot of time under my belt. I was, and I'll get to the other ones. I don't want to jump ahead, but all these five tools are things that I had. Anything to add?
I think the you mentioned like you mentioned being patient and everything, and I think this almost ties in with the Kobe thing. Failure is the first step to success. Like you're gonna fall, you're gonna fail, and that's normal. And being able to get back up and continue to push forward is how you keep going and you get that time under your belt.
Yeah, like
So,
I said, I mean, I've said this 100 times. If I saw the first workouts I wrote again, like ever, I'd vomit. They were so
oh,
bad.
I almost did
It's
when I
like
saw mine. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like then I got the opportunity of years out after years of studying and learning and growing to train, you know, the greatest female fighter of all time and some of the best fighters of all time. And Ian, Dustin, Charles, Amanda, Paul, like these guys, like you have to be ready for these types of things, right? And anybody who's listening to this now, whether you're younger or older, those times are going to come for you when the time is right. And you have to continue to put yourself there. And if you're doing these five things and you're still not getting them, then it's something, then it might be a marketing tool, right? Then it might be something you have to look outside of that. But for being a professional coach, these five things, in my opinion, need to be the forefront, right? But number one is time under tension. Number two is such an important one. Be your best client, right? Like this is one that I see so much in the industry that it bugs me. You don't have to train like an athlete, right? You don't have to train for 3 hours a day. You don't have to put yourself through grueling workouts, but you have to be willing to listen to yourself too, right? If you're not willing to go into the gym and do your workouts, if you're not willing to wake up early to get them in, if you're not willing to hit those lifts hard, track your sessions, go and do the ins and outs of learning and progression and innovation, like you're never going to be able to get someone to buy in to listen to you. You know what I mean? Like this, it's such an important piece. Like if you are not your best client, no one else is going to be there for you, right? And I see too many people who, again, they might be great salespeople and they get someone to buy into what they're doing, but in the 3 6 month range, they're like, I'm not seeing the results because they're not like them themselves aren't seeing the results, right? And like I said, it's not just about how you look as a trainer, and it's also just not about the education, but to a certain degree, like you have to train. You have to take care of yourself. You have to show that you know what you're doing and that it works to a certain level, right? Barring out like any, again, disease or physical limitation or thing like that that's stopping you, like you should be in decent shape, right? You should be able to mimic or show all the patterns that you need to show. It doesn't again, and there's always nuances and levels to this, but like you need to be your best client. That's all. Like literally just comes out. Be your best client before you're gonna have anybody else be your best client, right? Anything?
Just practicing what you preach, like you were saying. Like in my one of my biggest pet peeves with new coaches is they'll be like, "Yeah, I saw this on the internet. I'm gonna have my client try it," and then they'll go to demonstrate it and be like, "I've never done this before. Hold on," and it's like,
Yeah, I just
why
think
are
I
you
think
doing that?
you learn from trying it, right? Like you
Yeah.
understand the cues, you understand what makes like, and you see it because in coaching there's cues that just don't make sense, right? There's cues that people say that are just like, oh, I heard this on the internet and on the internet, it must be right. When if you actually do the movement, you're like, this doesn't make sense. Like this isn't a cue. Like this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to cue somebody. It's just like, and if you had never done it yourself, you're never gonna know, right? And
Hmm.
that's one of these things, right? And I think that, like you said, what did you say? Because there's something a thought that popped in my head.
Never doing the exercise
Oh yeah,
yourself
yeah. So
before
like
programming it.
you're just not trying. Like your process needs to be: you see the exercise, you try the exercise, you play around with some variation, then you can start to like kind of implement it into some people that you think can handle it, and then from there it's like okay, maybe like for example a professional athlete if you have access to those or something like that. But for the most part, like you have to do it first so you can feel it and try it, right? And this doesn't mean, I say this lightly because, there might be some things that you don't always have to try, but it's like, to a certain extent, you really shouldn't be programming something that you haven't ever fully done. If there's like testing protocols you've used a lot in the past or things that are very like structured that have a history or a background of working, that's a little bit different, I would say, to a certain extent. But with most movements, if you're seeing something, you should try it first because you can understand it and break it down. Then you can communicate that to somebody else, and then at a higher level, you can go from there. So number three, again, number one, time under tension. Number two, become your best client. Number three is learning. I think this is something that so many people forget in this process. Like you have to keep learning, right? It doesn't mean you had to reshape your entire identity every year or so. There's a couple of seconds left, so I'm going to stop this timer. Um,
No
but you
Hunger
have to
Games today.
continue to learn. Yeah, just because it's on my phone.
Yeah.
Do, 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 do.
That's Jurassic Park. That's
Oh yeah, that's
that's
Jurassic
different.
Park.
All right. All right, back to it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Learning, right? Learning. Putting yourself in opportunities to just learn. And it doesn't always have to be fitness. I think like one of the things that I've started to understand is that like fitness is about one of the things that comes next, or two of these things that the last two pieces to my five parts or our five parts, but it's learning. It's just finding ways to learn. Put yourself in environments that you're not usually into, because you can always bring it back to what you're doing, right? Like it might be fitness, it might be learning, it might be art, it might be music, it might be painting, it might be language, it might be instrument, like whatever it might be. All of these pieces have something that can bring us back to fitness. But even inside of fitness, something I need to do more and something I'm literally going to do like in a couple weeks is go to conferences, go to places where people are presenting things, go talk to people, go meet people, go hear different perspectives. You don't have to agree with it, right? But these opportunities are there for you to sit down and learn and talk and ask yourself the right questions. Like, do I believe that? Right? Or this is what I believe. They're saying this. I wonder what it is, right? I wonder if it's true. And this is something I've noticed as a coach and as I've traveled that I've been missing, right? And this is something that like as I've traveled the last couple of years is I've missed high level coaches around me. It's very hard when you're just by yourself without anybody there to kind of check you or to see new things or to have your thoughts um what's the word I'm looking for, like argued, right? Like this is the type of thing where I go and see this stuff and I see coaches who are struggling on a weekly basis or daily basis, even like myself, and it's like things get stale because you're not looking at new exercises. There's no one pushing you. In my case, I'm kind of dealing with the same athlete or same, people that I train, and sometimes it's just like I need new ideas. I need to see new bodies. I need to see new people, and this is where these ideas spark and learning and going to these conferences and going to these things. These are the opportunities where you have to really implement all these new ideas and take them away and bring them back into what you're doing as a coach. and then expand on them again, right? But this means you learn. You have to put yourself in a position to learn. You have to put yourself in a position to seek new information and have the current information that you have challenged to whatever degree it might be, right? Uh, anything to add?
One of my favorite quotes. I've probably said it before on the podcast too, but it's better to be the dumbest smart person in the room than the smartest dumb person. Surround
Yes.
yourself with people who know more than you. Surround yourself with people you can learn from and challenge yourself. That because you're not going to grow if you're surrounding yourself with people who don't want to grow or people who don't know what they're talking about. So networking, like Brandon said, going to conferences and meeting with people who are also as dedicated as you are or more dedicated so you can pull from it is one of the most important things as a coach.
Yeah, and I think like another thing, just because it's sitting right in front of me, like I've I've gone outside of fitness a lot of times in the last year. Right? I know people in fitness that I listen to and I pay attention to, but I think a lot of times there's people in life like this dude right here, who I'm diving into. I don't know if you can see that with the light.
You
Leonardo
see it.
da Vinci. Like people like this where it's like, you know, they're
Hell of a Ninja
innovative
Turtle.
creators. Yeah, yeah, hell of it. Um, uh, people who are creators in their field that like you can learn from, right? It doesn't have to be your field. You don't have to just go talk to trainers, right? You can go and talk to someone who's great at finance. You can go to talk to someone who's great at being an artist. You can go and talk to someone who's great at uh, you know, doing pranks, like Ashen Kanjan's Pangd.
Ashton Crashens banged.
Whatever it is, whoever's the best at what they do, like find what they do and why they're the best at it. And this is another theme that I've taken into account is like go find the people who are the best at what they do and see what they do and take those principles back into your field, right? There's so much you can learn from people who are just the best at something as opposed to like having to take any specific things from their field of work, right? Number four, principles and frameworks, right? It's so important that you as a coach develop your own set of principles and your own frameworks on how you think through things, right? Because frameworks are the way that we progress in life, and principles are the way that we kind of really like build our thought process out from. And especially in coaching, you want to have you want to have principles that withstand the test of time, right? And if you look at fitness, and it's starting to come around now, you're starting to see old stuff be used as new, and you're starting to see people who are going back in time and looking at the way that, the old Russians used to train, the Bulgarians, some of these people like these old sprinters and these old, athletes back in the day, you're seeing these people who are going back in time to look at how they were training and then taking that information and bringing it in today's world because I think training it's there's things that constantly work, right? It's progression, it's variation and movement types to a certain degree, but understanding movement, understanding human capacity, understanding that the squat, bench, and deadlift were great for a reason. The press, pull, hinge, squat, single leg, core, carry patterns, those like 6 to 7 patterns are fundamentally universally understood as like the main things you need inside of a strength conditioning program. And then conditioning principles on top of that. And then you develop frameworks that take you to that next process so you can explain that to somebody, right? What I kind of look at this as is like I have principles of what I believe, right? When someone comes to me and is like, I need help with X, Y, and Z for my next fight to lose weight, to feel better, I'm like, okay, cool. Then from there, what I do is I take that information, I break it down, and I go into my principles. I'm like, okay, how can these things that I know help? How do I want to structure them, right? What's the goal that I want to get to? Then from that goal, I go into frameworks, right? If it's a fighter, there's a certain way I'm going to think about the process. If it's a general person, there's a certain way I'm going to think about the process. If it's, a hybrid or someone who's kind of like going through, a phase of just wanting to feel better or move better, that type of thing, there's a certain way I'm going to think about it, right? And all of these are the frameworks in which I take the main things that I believe and then basically communicate that to someone on the goal that I want them to achieve inside of the program, right? And if you don't have your own principles, this is where people kind of latch on to methods over principles, right? They latch on to fad diets and fad programming styles and things like that, and they kind of get dragged out to sea, and then eventually they turn around and they're in the middle of the ocean on a bed, and they're like, where the hell do I go from here? Like, how do I get back? Right. When in theory, the way that I like to explain it is you want to have a place that you live, right? and you want to be able to know how to get back there, and you want to go seek new information and bring it back, seek new information and bring it back, seek new information and bring it back, and be able to kind of take the best pieces from everything. And one of the things I think that sets me apart as a coach is I've tried CrossFit, I've tried powerlifting, I've done bodybuilding, and I still do. I'm getting into endurance sports. I train MMA, and I understand all these different facets, and I've been through the ringer on all of them to know like what works, what doesn't, why I believe it, right? Why I think it works, why I don't think it works, where I think there's pieces of CrossFit that are literally amazing and how they fit into the actual person's life, and how I find pieces of CrossFit that I'm like, I'd never want to do that again. And like I would never be sad about never doing Fran again, right? But what I think that, like, again, CrossFit has the education is so good, right? Now, again, you take that and you kind of create like this, and this is BG Perform, right? BG Perform, me and Jerry, like we've created a framework of our principle of like, this is what we believe at the end of the day. And then when someone comes to us, our frameworks are fighter framework, general population framework, average client framework, new to the gym framework, right? Like all of these things are frameworks that we then think of to communicate to the next person. Anything?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to newer coaches, you're going to have an influx of a ton of information, and you're going to
Yeah.
see information coming from a ton of different sources, whether they're trustworthy or not. But like Brandon said, being able to have that base, grab this, come back, take this from here, bring it to here. The the biggest like piece of advice in that sense too is like stick to your framework and principles, but be open-minded to new information, but know when it's just like nonsense and when it's not. And sometimes that might take
Again, like, and
practice,
this is
but
Yeah, and this is the most important thing is like if you have principles, it's so easy to spot when shit just doesn't make sense, right? It's like
yeah.
if I understand the basics of strength training and I know that at the end of the day, even at its most basic form, you need to do movements and progressively add load or make them more challenging in terms of skill or add volume or one of those things. And you see someone who comes in and is like, you know, I don't have an example off the top of my head, but just says something ridiculous, right? You're like,
I
wait,
have
that
one.
what? Go ahead.
Like somebody who wants to get really strong. They're like, I want my squat to go up like 30 to 50 pounds. And a coach gives them circuit training. And you're like, all right, we're going to do a goblet squat here. And then we're going to do jump lunges here. And then we're going to run over to here. And we're going to do the same thing, but squat jumps with a TRX. And it's like, dude, that makes
Yeah.
no sense. Like,
Well, it's just like it doesn't make sense. Yeah, like it doesn't match the goal. And you can understand
yeah.
that when you actually understand progression, you actually understand strength training, you actually understand the body and physical demands that you need to get stronger and how that stuff works, right?
Mhm.
Sets and reps, volume, progression, periodization if you subscribe to it, like that type of thing, where these are the types of things that when you understand on a deeper level, when someone says some nonsense, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna assume that's not right. I'll like look at it and like pay attention, maybe like look at it, whatever. But I'm not going to, right? Like, and I don't believe it. But I will say this, because the last piece of it is innovation, right? And I think that number five for our list is innovation. I think that we have to give ourselves opportunities to innovate because not everything is always the same, right? There's information that changes, there's studies and things that come out, there's opportunities that can be had to gain information in new ways or patterns or movements, right? But we have to allow ourselves to do that. And I think what makes a great coach is someone who gives themselves the time to just innovate and just play and just have fun with it, right? Because I found so many things from just looking at so many different exercises and be like, oh, I wonder what would happen if we do this, or I wonder what would happen if I add this in or take this away or change the angle slightly or change the level of the pat, like that type of thing. And you start to, again, innovate. You start to create new ways and new theories of training and whatnot. But again, these are all methods, right? They're all just things that you add on to what the basics of fitness and health and performance are at the end of the day. And that's important, right? So just to kind of, again, like innovation, it kind of feeds the circle, right? It feeds the rest of this because like it gives us an opportunity to be like, all right, yeah, that doesn't work. Or it's like, whoa, like this might actually be something I can try on somebody, right? And then you go through there and a lot of the best things in life are, again, there's things that people have, said like that's not ever gonna work or like that's stupid, right? Like you talk about originally when someone probably said they were going to make the car, or you talk with somebody who said they were going to make the TV, or that's, Facebook wasn't going to be a thing, and it's just like, okay,
The
cool. And
Wright
it's like,
brothers making a flying
yeah,
device that you can
yeah.
control.
So it's like, I actually heard they weren't the first ones to make planes, but that was just a
Maybe
conspiracy
it was the wrong
theory.
brothers.
I heard that they someone else flew a plane earlier, but and farther before the Wright brothers.
Damn.
But
Who
they
got shot in the head
somehow,
to make that happen
yeah,
for the Wright brothers?
I don't know, something like that.
Oh boy.
But yeah, so anyways, I lost my train of thought now.
We were talking about innovation.
Yeah, so the best things in life happen because people were kind of thinking outside the box, and you have to. And in fitness, it's so important to think outside the box because someone like myself, right? I sometimes I struggle because I've broken fitness down to such like a fundamental view that it's like, all right, where do I even go from here? And it's important to play around and do 21s on biceps and do, things that you're like, like this is just fun. Like this feels good to get a pump. Not everything has to be, this exact method of programming or this exact science. Like sometimes it just needs to be fun. Sometimes it just needs to be different, right? And when you do different, again, like the 80/20 rule works perfect for this. Like if 80% of the time you're going to the gym and doing the things that work, and then 20% of the time you're like, let me put a band on this, or like let me throw a kettlebell on this, or let me try a rep from a different angle, right? Like that's where things move forward and they progress, right? And that's what makes us different. That's what sets ourselves apart because we might make a new method, we might make a new exercise, we might make a new way of training, right? All of this is just it's pieces, right? And to kind of summarize this, because I think this is probably going to be one of our longer podcasts.
There's a lot of
Number
info. Good
one,
info.
yeah, yeah, very good. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. But number one, time under tension, right? You need time. Number two, become your best client. You have to be the best version of what you're looking for, right? Number three is learning, putting yourself in opportunities to learn and get your thoughts challenged. And I think that's even more important than learning is getting your current thoughts challenged regularly, right? And not getting upset about it. I think in today's world, there's a very much thing where it's like your thoughts are challenged, you get upset and you attack somebody, as opposed to being like, okay, well, like, what are they trying to say? And then digesting it and being like, do I agree or do I disagree? Right. Number four is principles and frameworks. Basically, what is the information that you kind of build yourself upon? And then what are the ways that you think about it and communicate that to somebody else? And then last but not least, innovations, right? So creating new ways of training, creating new ways of exercise, and giving yourself an opportunity to just explore what's outside of, the normal confines of what you're told to think of as a coach, right? Anything you want to add to that?
Uh, Daily practices. Just this is stuff that, like Brandon said in the very beginning, you should be doing this every day. Also, the daily discipline group, BG Perform. Check that
Yes.
out. That's
Yes.
that's where you can get more
Actually,
information like that.
I changed it to learn and grow again because
Learn and grow.
I think that makes more sense, like learn and
Yeah,
grow, the
I
channel
like it.
name. But so yeah, I mean Jerry's right. Like, again, like these five things aren't going to just make you a great coach. But what it's going to do is like it's going to give you something to do each day. And before you can do anything each day, like and get to become a professional coach, like you need to know what you're going to do, right? And like
Mhm.
this, you need to dedicate yourself to this. And I think that these things over time, right? And this is one of the last things I want to say is like the most important piece is time, right? And obviously it was time under tension is the first one, but as a whole, it's like you need to do this stuff for a long time, right? You need to do this stuff for as long as you possibly can. And it's going to start to mix together and just be a part of who you are. And it's going to set you apart from other coaches in this industry. I promise you. Like I can tell you because I'm going through it now where I set myself apart. I studied, I learned, I moved away from my family. I moved away from everything that I knew to go chase things and go see people and put myself in front of people. Whether it worked out or not, I'd say it worked out amazingly, right? And I'm able to kind of like have a different view. But, all this stuff started with me having time to make mistakes at Thrive, like my first gym, right? Becoming my best client and losing weight and training myself every single day and putting myself through what I wanted to do in training and try things and understand concepts and understand cueing and what actually makes sense to cue and what doesn't, right? Learning. I've dedicated and spent so much money on becoming the best version of myself. And I'm going to continue to do that at a new level now because I want to take that next step in helping you guys become better too. Number four is principles and frameworks. Like this is something I've thought of like for a very long time is like, what do I think? Right? Like, what do I believe? And like, well, how does that differ And what are the people that I trust and that continue to show me value? What do they believe? And how does that fit with what I believe? And then how do I communicate that to somebody? Those are like one of the most important pieces for me. And then innovation, like I said, just create ways to train, right? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter if someone else did it already. It doesn't matter if it's not existed yet. Just come up with ways to train. And if it makes you feel good and it breeds some type of result, continue it. You never know, right? But like stick with the basics, understand what 100% does work no matter what. And from there, add in little pieces of just trying to make it all feel better, look cooler, and becoming like the best version of yourself as a coach. So, yeah, wow, that was good. I think
That was very good.
I don't know if I have anything to add to that, but I think this is again like this is one of the most important topics I think I want to talk about, and I think that that's the reason why Jerry brought it up is actually Jerry's idea that like sparked this conversation because this is something that like if you followed us for a long time that I've talked about for a long time and one of the things I'm excited about is within the next 6 months I'm going to be launching the BG Perform, I guess we'll call it mentorship, that me and Jerry are going to be running, and I'm working on some of the details with it now, but it's going to include all this stuff. It's going to include the real like the real framework of how to become a professional coach, not just make $10,000 a month. Like I'm not claiming to help you with your money. I'm not
Are you an
claiming
online
to.
fitness coach?
I'm so sick of hearing that shit.
Do you want to make $100,000 a month? This is how you're gonna do it. Pull your pants down and shut the door. Give me
Click
your
the link
fucking wallet.
online. But seriously, like, I'm not sitting here and we're not sitting here claiming to be financial gurus or anything like that. What I'm claiming is like I can show you how to become the best version of yourself as a coach. I can show you the best processes. I can show you my program methodology. I can show you the way I think about this stuff. I can show you how I think you should become a professional coach. I can show you conditioning, assessment, consultation, all of it, right? Inside of what we're going to build here. And most of it's built. There's a couple little things that I want to add into it and that me and Jerry are going to work on in the next few months. And I'm excited about it. And I think that for everybody that's here and wants to take that step, like today's the first step is like you need to have this process in your head of I want to be a professional coach. And then that the rest of this stuff kind of is like a domino effect, right? Everything comes from there. So I hope this helped you guys. I hope you guys take a lot away from this. I hope the camera quality is better because I'm using my nice camera. I hope it sounds nice. We're leveling up this year, and we're gonna make shit happen. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys took a lot away from this. If you have any questions, obviously hit me up. Join the BG Perform Learn and Grow channel on Instagram. That'll be like where you get everything first dibs really when the program comes out, and I'm always dropping information on there as well. And yeah, anything to add, Jerry?
Follow us on Insta at BG Perform
All right.
underscore and at Coach Jerry Hayes.
Yes, sir.
And hit
And
us
we
up
will
if you
see
have
you guys.
questions.
Yes, yes, yes. We will see you guys next time. Peace.